real parents, real stories. It's the Meet the Parents podcast.
Welcome to episode 32 of the Meet the Parents podcast and another 30 minutes of family-themed chat from some of the UK's top parent bloggers. I'm Tim from Slouching Towards Thatcham, and this evening I'm talking with Amie from Finding Our Feet and Hannah from Budding Smiles. Good evening, ladies.
Hi.
Hello.
So on this week's podcast we're going to talk about balancing work and family life, and get a bit of an update from Amie about the Bloggers for Refugees campaign. Finding the right work-life balance is a real challenge for many parents. It's all very well saying that we work to live rather than live to work, but the reality is that many of us have to make some kind of sacrifice or compromise in order to live the life we want. Having said that, the nature of work can often be more flexible these days than it was, say, 20 years ago, with a much greater range of options for working remotely or with flexible hours. So let's kick off with Amie. Now, you've been back at work. How many months is it now?
It is 9. No, it's 8 at the end of this month.
Let's talk about how you and the other half are coping with the challenges of work-life balance. Let's just start. If you can just remind us about the arrangement with you and your other half's work situations.
Of course. So we both work full-time. We're both 5 days a week, and my partner drives to work. It's just shy of an hour's drive, and I get the train back into London every day. As a result, he does pretty much every single nursery run. She's at nursery 4 days a week, and then my mum has our daughter on a Wednesday day, and we've started actually doing that. She has a sleepover there on a Tuesday night as well, which gives the other half 1 night a week plus Wednesday 2 nights a week where he's not worrying about having to leave. He literally has to leave at 5 on the dot, which obviously fine, that's his contracted hours, but no one leaves at bang on 5. And the worry is that there's certain negative connotations that come with that as well, although everyone knows the reasons he's doing it, but obviously it sometimes plays on your mind. And then I work from home on a Thursday, so that there is at least 1 day in the week that I get to do the nursery run. It doesn't always work out if the other half needs the car. If he's not in London, he tries to organise meetings in London on a Thursday, but obviously if he needs the car, he needs the car. But yeah, on the whole, Thursday is my day, and I get to have breakfast with my daughter, which is nice, and I get to pick her up and just have a bit of time, because there's a lot of evenings in the week that I just don't get back in time, and I literally kind of walk in the door as they're doing a story, which, depending on the day she's had, I sometimes get a text saying, don't let on that you're here, she really, really needs to go to sleep. Most of the women I know are the other way around. Like, we have quite an unusual scenario, because we don't have a stay-at-home dad scenario, but yeah, I'm definitely not the primary caregiver anymore, which is a very strange scenario to find myself in.
Yeah, and how big an adjustment has that been for you? Because obviously that's a complete 180-degree turn from the situation beforehand.
Yeah, I was at home with her pretty much 2 years. I went back just before her second birthday, and it's been a major adjustment for all of us. The other half has been incredible. There's a in-joke that he's far more domesticated than I ever was, and he would make a far better house husband than I ever made a housewife. It's been a big adjustment for Little Miss, and this summer when I'd been at work about 6 months, and we basically were pitching for 2 new clients, and it got quite busy, and there was a couple of weeks where I hadn't got home for probably more than 2 nights in the week for bedtime, and she actually made it very clear that she was upset by that, and she said, I don't see you. She wasn't quite that eloquent. She was only 2 at the time, but yeah, she basically was saying, I don't see enough of you anymore, and I miss you. And that was really, really tough to hear.
It's been a big adjustment for all 3 of you, but I guess particularly for her.
I think having the day with my mum in the week has really, really helped, because it means that she has 2 days, then she has a day with my mum, and then 2 days again at nursery. And she loves nursery, that's not a problem. She was going to nursery part-time even when I was off work, so that there was days I could go to interviews and things. So it's not like that was a major adjustment, which is good. But that day in the middle of the week, I think, has just given her a bit of a respite she gets to kind of have a quieter day, recharge, be with someone who is kind of from the family, and she adores my mum, which is really handy. I would love that fifth day was with me, but it's not possible at the moment. So I'm just really grateful that part of when I went back to work, part of the contract, it wasn't what they had originally said it would be. So I basically said, okay, I will take this, but I want 1 day a week from home, and my contracted hours are 9 till 6. And if I left London at 6, I would literally never see my daughter in the evenings. So I basically negotiated that I can leave at 5. They have been incredibly flexible, incredibly understanding. Like she had chickenpox about 3 weeks after I started a new job, and they were just like, just take the week. It's fine. You don't need to take it as holiday. You don't need to take it as sick time. Your daughter has chickenpox. It's fine. Just take the days. I mean, they've been brilliant. It has been really tough, but they've made it as easy as it possibly could be, which is brilliant.
You know, we've talked previously about how you've got a pretty hefty commute, which really does, or it can squeeze the amount of time that you have with Little Miss at both ends of the day. Has there been anything in particular that you didn't expect that has really impacted your work-life balance?
I knew it was going to be tough not being the primary caregiver, but I didn't expect the jealousy that I feel not being the person dropping her off at nursery and like hearing about her day, not from her, but just from the key workers. And like the other half and I have had chats about this because, you know, he's not great at passing on the messages and things. He kind of gives me one highlight and it's like, yeah, but she must have done more than that. Tell me everything. And he's like, I don't really remember. And I get frustrated and I'm so tired. You know, I was tired before when I was a stay-at-home mum, but this is a different type of tired. There's just no time. That's the biggest drag on the work-life balance for me, is just like trying to find time when you're in your life aspect to actually enjoy living, as daft as that sound, because there's, you know, make the lunches, repack the nursery bag, make sure you've done a load of laundry, the bathroom needs cleaning, the kitchen needs cleaning, you need to do something else, you need to change the bed, you need to do this.
You've kind of alluded to just now, haven't you, that you know, in an ideal world, the 5th day of the week you would be spending at home with Little Miss rather than spending it in the office, and you know, that's the kind of sacrifice and compromise you make, isn't it?
It is, but then I had an unusual situation. We spoke about it way back when the podcast first started, that, you know, I had been unemployed for 2 years, and so I kind of couldn't be picky and choosy about whether or not I went back part-time or whatever. We needed the money. However, I think there is also something to be said for, I didn't actually enjoy being a stay-at-home mum that much. I wasn't that good at it. That's not to say I'm a bad mum. I found myself getting irritable and bored, if I'm perfectly honest. And I have so much respect for women who enjoy it and, you know, make it their life to be a stay-at-home mum, whatever that may entail with it. I know, Hannah, you've now gone freelance and you'd still probably class yourself as a stay-at-home mum in some ways, but I could tell that I wasn't being a good mum. So yes, I would love that 5th day to be at home, but I would rather be at work 5 days a week and not irritable on the weekends. And when I do spend that time with Little Miss, then have the time that I feel like I should have with her, but maybe not actually be that good at it. So I don't know. It swings and roundabouts, isn't it, really? I mean, it's a pretty hard job whatever you do.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to a lot of that. I mean, I am sort of technically, I guess I'm a work-at-home mum now, but I always, before I had children, before I even met my husband, I always imagined myself being a stay-at-home mum. It was just all I wanted was to be a mum. I didn't have any career path that I was on. I didn't have any career ambitions at all. It was purely that I was waiting until I had the opportunity to be a mum. And when that happened when I was 27, and I tried being the whole stay-at-home mum thing, and I have to say I can completely understand where you're coming from, Amie, because I was not as good at it as I thought I was going to be. I thought I'd be this natural earth mother type person, and instead I was just like, oh God, they make so much mess. And then it's really, you know, he's lovely and everything, but he cries an awful lot, and there's only so many play groups I can go to in a week before I want to smack my head against the wall. And, you know, and then the whole reason why I probably am so terrible with things like Pinterest is because I'll go on there and I'll be like, oh, that would be a lovely thing to do. Pause. for someone who can actually do stuff like lovely crafting and baking.
Yes.
And, I see people baking with their 2-year-olds are just thinking, who the heck bakes with a 2-year-old? My child would just destroy the place.
It's so funny.
So I do get what you're saying.
This weekend, Little Miss requested crafts, and my partner is actually away on a boys' week this week, so it's just me and her. And I said, we'll do whatever you want. We'll have proper girls' weekend. And she was like, crafts. Literally, what the hell do I do? So I was like, going on Pinterest, thinking, what's the simplest, most basic craft I can find that is probably plausible for us? And we've actually had a really nice weekend. There's a few things that have non-washable orange paint on them, but other than that, it's been really nice. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I can imagine it must have been even harder if you had that image of being an earth mum and stuff in your head. Whereas for me, I was the career woman, and just in my head, kids, if I'm honest, didn't actually factor. If I hadn't fallen pregnant unexpectedly, it may never have happened. I didn't, I suppose, have that expectation. But then once she was here, I had the expectation of the type of mum I wanted to be. It wasn't necessarily an earth mum, but, everyone has an expectation, don't they? And it's hard to live up to.
It's funny you mentioned crafts. I think the 4 worst words in the English language for any parent to hear are, Daddy, can we paint? Or Mummy, can we paint?
I read a really brilliant post. This is actually a while back, earlier this summer, by Steph from don'tbuyherflowers.com. And it was, with this ring, I give thee my dregs. And I just thought that, we're not married, we don't have rings, but, we have a baby, it's the same thing. I just thought it was brilliant, because she basically goes through how, at the end of the day, once you've gotten through your day at work, then you come home, you get through bedtime with the kids, you get through making dinner, doing all the chores around the house, and then you kind of have that final 20 minutes left to actually spend it with your other half. And probably most people spend it in front of Netflix or the BBC or whatever you're watching, with your phone in one hand, and you don't end up actually even cuddling on the sofa, because, to be honest, you just need 20 minutes on your own. You don't actually want to spend it with anyone else.
Let's turn now to Hannah. So, in addition to being a mum to Toby and Martha, as Amy's already just mentioned, you also fit in freelance work. Can you briefly describe for us what you do and how you fit it in around the challenge of childcare?
I think the what I do part is slightly easier than the how I fit it in. So when Toby was 9-ish months old, about 9 months old, my maternity leave ended at my previous employer. I was working in special needs education, and so I handed my notice in. I'd always known I wasn't going to go back to that job, and that was last sort of February, March time. So on the back of handing my notice in there, I started working, set up myself as self-employed, and did some work as freelance, copywriting, social media management and such, working with some other bloggers. There's Shell, who set up her own social media company, Social Sparkle, and she was giving me bits of work that she had, and it kind of went on from there, really. So I was basically doing copywriting, blog writing and social media management for other brands, as well as having my own blog. Once Toby was 11 months old, he started going into nursery once a week on a Monday, and he would generally stay at my mum's house on a Thursday night and stay there until Friday late afternoon. So that worked really, really well. Then when Toby was 1, I fell pregnant with Martha. So I carried on doing what I was doing basically until Martha was born. It always sort of been in the back of my head since I'd had Toby that I wanted to set up my own business. And I think it's when you become a parent, you start looking at the products that are out there and the things that you really need and the things that are absolutely useless that just have really clever marketing and things like that. And so just a couple of weeks ago, all my plans from the last year and a half or so finally came to fruition, and I opened up an online shop selling parent and baby and toddler products. So it's kind of all my favourite things that I've really loved and found to be amazing since becoming a parent, and I'm sort of selling a lot of them through my shop, Apples and Pips. But since Martha arrived, Toby has... just back in September, Toby went up to go into nursery twice a week, and he now goes on a Monday and a Wednesday, and then he goes to my mum's Thursday afternoon, stays overnight, and is there Friday. So really, I only have all day Tuesday and Thursday mornings with him. And at first I found that really, really difficult. Like I was just, oh, well, I haven't got my business established yet. I can't justify having that much childcare. I felt like I was really kind of almost fobbing off being his mum. And then I felt really guilty because obviously I still had Martha at home, and it's like, if I can work around her, why can't I work around him? You know, a business can't thrive if you haven't had the time to invest in setting it up and promoting it. So in my head, I knew that he needed to be in childcare or with my mum that amount of time, but I also found it really difficult to justify at first. But now we're kind of finding our way a lot more with it and settling into things, and the business is launched.
Tell us where the name Apples and Pips came from.
Well, really, it sort of started, I wanted something that represented parents and children, but not too twee, I suppose. We live in the countryside. We actually live quite close to Sir Isaac Newton's birthplace and the famous apple tree where the apple supposedly fell down and you know, he discovered gravity, so to speak, and all the rest of it. So it felt really nice because it's kind of a bit of a nod towards our family home and the apples there, and also the apples being the parents and the pips being the children. Whilst I've been in Spain, I've been super productive and coming up with taglines for it with the help of some lovely friends on Facebook. So we've now created the tagline, handpicking the best products for parents, babies and toddlers. So that's the full package now.
It's lovely, Hannah. I didn't realise kind of all of that was behind the name.
Yeah, I wanted it to feel really personal, but also be kind of representative of everybody, not just this is me and my family, because that's what the blog's for, really. That's not what the shop's for.
Yeah, and tell us a bit more about the kind of products that you're selling.
So there's a really nice range of all different things. So it's literally just really, really simple, set into parents, babies and toddlers with a few subcategories. But there's things like a waterproof blanket for baby wearing, because when I first started baby wearing Toby, it was the middle of summer and it was a absolutely beautiful summer. Then all of a sudden the rain came in and I was like, how can I still wear him in the sling and keep him dry and warm? And lo and behold, there's a product for that. And so I just got them on board. I've recently secured to add a gratitude journal. So I think that's really good for parents who maybe are struggling and finding that things seem a bit overwhelming. So they can have this journal and they can write down things that they're really grateful for and goals and aspirations and things like that. Got the snooze shade, which is like a universal buggy cover, and that keeps baby safe and protected from the sun's rays, and it can be used in light rain as well, and just helps them kind of stay asleep as well if they're having a little nap in their pushchair, so that they're not distracted by external noises. So just like a really nice range, some cloth nappies and clothes and leggings by my friend Alex at Lamb and Bear. So all sorts of really lovely products. Most of the brands whose products I'm selling are other parents who have decided to give up their full-time work on the back of becoming parents and have maybe spotted a gap in the market for a particular product, and they've gone out there and they've designed it and they've put it to market. So it kind of feels like I'm supporting other parent brands and they're supporting me by agreeing to sell their products through me. And also 10% of all the profits that I make are being donated to Mama Academy, which is a charity I've supported for quite a while now, because they are basically helping to educate parents and midwives and create awareness about how we can reduce the UK stillbirth rate. So it just feels like a little community of parents and the charity all together kind of helping one another.
Oh, that's fantastic. So now this is your first business, isn't it? Now, in recent episodes, I've done some interviews with mums who set up businesses for themselves in the toy and games industry, and speaking to each of them, they all spoke about how steep a learning curve it can be, discovering, various aspects of how business works, from pitching to retailers and setting up manufacturing to, finance and all the legal stuff that comes with setting up a business. But, how's that been for you so far?
I think without my blogging background, it would have been a heck of a lot harder. But because of having had the blog for, sort of 2.5 years by the time I was pitching to brands and getting everything set up, it's actually been fairly straightforward. To be quite honest, I'm touching a lot of wood here because I really don't want to put myself in a situation where it suddenly becomes horrific. But I think because of my blog, I'm used to working with brands. I'm used to interacting with PRs and other business people. I'm pretty au fait with the social media side of things. Phil, my husband, is a web developer, so he's able to design the website. The biggest thing for me is kind of the accountancy side of it. And if I'm quite honest, I do feel like I'm completely winging it with that side of things. I had been set up as self-employed anyway for a few bits and bobs that I was earning when I was doing the social media work over the last year, 18 months. So I've kind of already set up with HMRC, which feels like a full-time job in itself just to get started. But as far as when I have to start registering for VAT and stuff like that, I will be seriously thinking that I need to hire an accountant because that is just way out of my depth. So I'm kind of just learning a lot of it as I go along and hoping that I don't make any major mistakes. But it seems to be going really well so far, so fingers crossed.
Have you got any particular kind of goal in mind for where you would like to be with the business in, say 12 to 18 months from now?
Long term, I would absolutely love to have a physical shop. Where I live here out in the sticks, there are a lot of families coming into the area, but the shops and the local high streets just are not keeping up with this new demand for parenting goods at all. So there is this massive gap in the market, and I'm just desperate to jump in there and get Apples and Pips, in the local area as a bricks and mortar shop before somebody else comes along and beats me to it.
Well, you've heard it here first. Watch out on your local high street for apples and pips coming to your town soon. But in the meantime, where can people find you online?
If you want to go to the website, it is applesandpips.co.uk, and on all social media, I'm simply Apples and Pips. So that's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I have got the YouTube channel set up, so I'm hoping to do product tutorials in the near future when I find a little bit of spare time.
Both in terms of setting up this new business and what you've been doing previously, content writing and social media management and so on. I think those are great examples of the kind of work that perhaps wasn't so easily available to previous generations of workers. But I guess one final question: being essentially home based, do you find it a challenge to separate home life from work life, or do you find the two just blur together a bit?
Oh, it's definitely a challenge. For starters, I still haven't got around to having a separate business phone. And so for as long as my phone is there, my work is there. And that includes, I just got back from Spain this morning. And in my 5 days in Spain, I spent so much time sending emails and stuff. And I was like, I've had a really productive time in Spain. I've secured 4 new brands for the website, and it's like, you're meant to be on holiday. So even on holiday, there's no escaping it. And I think when you're self-employed and home-based, it can be so difficult to switch off. I mean, I have a separate office at home, which is fantastic, but don't get me wrong, there are these times where I just slob out on the sofa with my laptop on because there's something I want to watch on the telly, or because Martha wants to be in her jumperoo or whatever. So it can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, and I think particularly when you're in the early days of setting up a new business, it's about as far removed from a regular 9-to-5 job as it can be, and it can become very easily all-consuming, can't it? As for me, as many of you will know, I started a new job a few months back, which means that I'm travelling a bit more than I used to, and I'm certainly working longer hours, and it's probably the latter actually that impacts me the most. I'm finding I'm leaving for work typically half an hour earlier in the morning, and I'm frequently getting home at 7 o'clock or later rather than 6 o'clock or 6:30 like I used to, and that has quite a significant impact on the amount of time I get to spend with kids during the week. So I'm finding that's really starting to impact my work-life balance, and I found it particularly noticeable over the last few weeks where Carver's just started school. I'm hearing about everything secondhand, and I'm missing out a fair bit on, hearing what Carver's doing and what the boys are doing as well firsthand, and that can be quite tough. And my wife, she's contracted to work 3 days a week across 4 days, so she works 1 full length day and 3 school length days. But because she works on,
that's a good deal.
Yeah, and there are a lot of pluses to it, but But equally, because she works on customer projects, the reality is that actually she spends a lot of her evenings either catching up with, project work or, setting stuff running that has to run overnight and things like that. So the reality probably is, the flexibility is brilliant, but she probably works closer to a full 5 days worth of hours a week rather than the 3 she's contracted for. And, she does that willingly because it gives her the flexibility to pick the kids up from school. But, it does come at a bit of a price as well. And probably what we're both finding at the moment is, work-life balance is definitely a bit elusive right now. If anyone has any top tips they'd like to share with us for improving their work-life balance, we're all ears.
Please.
Back in episode 29, Amie talked about what she was doing to set up the Bloggers for Refugees campaign to raise awareness of and support the plight of those stranded in the Calais jungle. Now, I think things have been really picking up since then, so I thought we'd check in with her again quickly. So, Amie, what's been happening with the campaign, both in terms of what you've been writing and also some of the other stuff that you've been doing?
Yes, it is going really, really well. We've now got over, I think it's nearly 50 bloggers on board, which is fantastic. More are always welcome. As I mentioned last time, we don't have one overarching fundraising campaign at the moment. We're more trying to help existing campaigns that maybe need an extra boost or a bit of extra awareness. And then we're also trying to write pieces that generally change perceptions and raise awareness of the crisis. Because in the UK and in many people's minds, either they've kind of forgotten that it's going on or they've turned a blind eye, or kind of one blogger last week, Hackney Mama, she wrote a brilliant line which was about, it was like her brain, every time the kind of Oxfam ads or whatever come on TV, it's like her brain puts its hands over her ears and just goes la 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 la, because it's too painful to think about. We've had quite a few pieces going live on changing perceptions, and then in the last couple of weeks we've been supporting a campaign which is in the Calais camp at the moment, and the aim was to raise £10,000 to support 1,000 unaccompanied children living in Calais. President Hollande vowed at the beginning of this year to dismantle the Calais jungle by the end of the year. And in the last couple of weeks, there was very strong rumours that that was actually going to happen by the end of October. He already dismantled a third of it back in January, and 129 children went missing. And so there was a lot of concern, what is going to happen to these 1,000 kids who have nobody? One little boy from Afghanistan was interviewed. I think he was 13 or 14, and he said, I think my family are in Afghanistan, but I've lost contact with them. And I have no way of finding out if they're still in Afghanistan. Have they made it to a refugee camp? Other children have been sent to these camps for their protection by the family, and then obviously they lose contact, and they're basically orphans because they have no way of finding their family. They need help. They need somebody to look after them, and so many of them are eligible to come across to the UK, but local authorities are pushing back because they say that they don't have the resources, which, if I'm perfectly honest, my mum works in local authority, and although she is one of the people who's helping me run Bloggers for Refugees, and she's been out to Calais to volunteer and stuff, she's 100% on board, but she actually says, yeah, I can see why the local authorities are saying that. We are stretched, budgets are at an all-time low, we're struggling, but what we perceive to be struggling is nothing in comparison to what these poor kids are living through. One little boy who's 14 gave up. He had every right to be in the UK. He was just waiting for his papers to be processed, but it was taking too long, so he jumped on a lorry and he ended up run over, and he's the youngest so far to die trying to get into Britain that way. Depression is on the rise. Kids are self-harming. They're burning themselves with cigarettes methodically as a cry for help. They are genuinely slitting their wrists and hoping they will die, because that is a sweet release from the place they're living. It's just... Sorry. I didn't expect to get emotional, sorry. I've read so many of these articles, it doesn't wash over me, but I just kind of go into campaigner mode, and I didn't expect to get emotional there, sorry.
But it's hard not to, isn't it? When you hear some of the stories and you see some of the pictures, it's hard as human beings not to be touched by that.
The thing that I find so frightening is just how many people are claiming they don't care. I'm literally lost for words. I know there's so many, there's Haiti at the moment, there's cancer patients left, right and centre. There's so many causes vying for people's time, vying for funding, vying for every resource you can imagine. But this particular cause with the unaccompanied children in Calais, we were trying to raise money to supply them with a backpack to house any meagre possessions they may have, a pair of shoes, maybe if we could, a bottle of water and a cell phone with 20 quid credit on it, so that at least when the camp gets dismantled, and it will, that they at least had means to contact the emergency services if they needed to. Such a simple thing, but for them it really could save their lives. And the aim was to raise £10,000, which would have funded that, and I am just so over the moon to say we ended up raising just over 12,000, which was just the generosity of some people. We had someone donate £1,500 on their own. I mean, I was gobsmacked at the amounts that some people were donating. But that being said, the one message I did want to put across today was, in my blog post, I was calling for my readers to just donate £1. That was it. That was all I wanted. Because if, even half the people that read that blog post had donated just £1 each, we would have funded at least one pack for one child, which doesn't sound much, but it's better than nothing. Just £1. That was literally it. And if we work together, those £1 will make a lot of difference. So please, whatever you can, even if it's not Bloggers for Refugees, which I hope it is, but whatever the cause is that tugs at your heartstrings, those little donations still make a difference.
It often takes something like this, I think, just to remind you that for all the very loud and very vocal and sometimes very selfish stuff that we hear from some people in the media, that there is also quite a large, almost silent majority who will quietly and very generously give, even as you say, even if it's just £1, because it does all make a difference. Now, someone who isn't afraid to speak her mind and raise publicity, about this issue has been pop star Lily Allen, who caused quite a bit of controversy over the past week or so. She visited the camp in Calais. She caused a bit of a furore where she apologised to a child on behalf of the entire country, which not surprisingly prompted the usual polarisation of opinion on social media, including a hail of criticism from, unsurprisingly, Jan Moyer in the Daily Mail, but also even the Daily Telegraph. Now, LBC radio presenter James O'Brien, who is no stranger to controversy and stirring the pot himself, actually came out very vocally and publicly in defence of Lily Allen, prompting the singer herself to call in and say that perhaps she could have chosen her words a bit better in a way that was, perhaps almost excessively apologetic. Now, I've looked into this. I've seen all the usual snarky comments on social media and in the comments section of websites and stuff. We've had everything from the reverse snobbery of the fact that she was born into a well-off family, so who is she to speak about suffering, to being called out for using a cause to promote herself, to being called pig ignorant for oversimplifying and overgeneralizing some of the causes of the refugee crisis. We've had all the usual accusations that you come to expect from all the bottom feeders. So any thoughts on this from either of you?
I think there's two parts to this for me. One is that I am all for celebrities trying to raise awareness. The Game of Thrones guys went out and did a fabulous video to really share people's stories and make them people in Brits' minds. Earlier in the summer, that was with Western Union, I think. Angelina Jolie does a ton of stuff with refugees. She was interviewed she did a whole episode of Women's Hour where she presented it on this topic and things. And the thing that does sadden me, and this is the second part, is that probably the people who are making those horrendous comments and not really taking on the message of what they're saying are the people that actually really need to hear it, for me. And that's what's saddest. And I don't know how we start to get through to those people, because we as bloggers will come under the same flack, I'm sure, because although we have not got the same kind of celebrity as those names I just mentioned, you could say that we're writing these pieces in hope of getting views on the blog, in hope of upping our stats and getting a share on our hashtag or whatever. But again, for me, it does just come back to, if you're in a position where you have any kind of social influence, why not try and use that for good in some way and actually help somebody with it?
I agree. I think that, whether it be through a blog that reaches a couple of thousand people, or through being a celebrity where you can reach millions, if you have got any influence to be had and you can do good with that, then that, I don't know, I just think it has to be a positive thing. I think the trouble is that there are also people who have social influence who, if a celebrity is trying to do a good thing, then someone else who's got some social influence, writing for some awful magazine or newspaper or website or whatever, they then flip it around and they actually, by saying that celebrity, Lily Allen or whoever, by turning around and accusing them of doing it for their own gain, then that reporter or whoever themselves is detracting from the whole point of the cause. And so I think it's really, really sad that, okay, yeah, celebrities say these things because they know they can influence, but that's great when it's hoping to affect positive change. But then you have these other people who flip that completely on its head and turn around, and they're the ones who are making it all about the celebrity. It's not the celebrity. It wasn't Lily Allen herself making it all about her. It was then the people who reported negatively on it who were making it all about a celebrity, instead of reporting on the bit that really, really mattered, which was the plight of these children and the other refugees in the jungle who are about to be displaced into God only knows where.
I think I agree with both of you. I mean, it occurs to me that, even if she did only visit the camp for a few minutes, as some people were suggesting, and, even if she knew that she would get some free publicity for herself out of it, which I'm sure she knew she would, but that's kind of not the point, is it? The fact is that she went and she did it, and she has done something to stimulate the debate. And if some of the arguments she put forward were overly simplistic, well, that's kind of what you almost have to do when you're producing a film or a video of this kind of nature anyway, because that's what you have to do to get the message through to people. As a mother of two, isn't she entitled to get a bit emotional about it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, look at me, I'm sat here crying on a podcast. I think it's also worth, probably a lot of people don't realise how difficult it is to get that kind of rights to do that sort of filming in the camps. So one of the women at the charities that we're supporting, I'm really trying to get something set up in 2017 that is a much bigger campaign for our bloggers. We've had quite a few who are far, far more influential than I am in the blogging world say they would really like to go out to the camps and do some filming, do some photography. So many bloggers are fantastic photographers and things. Could they start to bring these stories to life for us? You cannot get in the gates with a camera. It's impossible. You've got to remember, these are these people's lives. They have to give you permission to use their face, even the back of their head or their foot in a photo. You can't just waltz up and go, so we're going to do some filming today. Hope that's okay with everyone. Great. Don't worry, you have no rights anyway, so we're just going to feature you. It's really tough. So I also think that it's not fair for people to say that she may have simplified things, that she may have only been allowed 5 minutes of filming. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes from a production perspective.
No, absolutely. And that's a really good point. I think I've seen comments along the lines of, and this is the sort of thing that really winds me up, where people have said, well, if she's so worried about the refugees, why doesn't she just give away her fortune to help?
What were they saying about simplifying the argument?
Firstly, many wealthy or famous people are quite heavily involved in charity and other philanthropic efforts, but they don't necessarily publicly announce that they're giving their time and money to them. You mentioned Angelina Jolie, Bill Gates. I mean, even a lot of Premier League footballers who aren't the sort of people we necessarily think of having a social conscience do a lot of work for charity, but they don't publicise it. J.K.
Rowling is the first person, man or woman, to fall out of the top 100 richest list because she's given so much of it away to charity.
Why do people seem to think that just because someone is a celebrity and is wealthy, that they should give away all their money just because they have it? And then, the last thing for me, and the most important thing from my perspective is, actually, why not focus more on what you can do, rather than preaching about what you think other people should do? It's very easy for people to point the finger and say, well, why isn't so and so doing more to support charities? And you do wonder whether these are the sort of people who would ever give money to any cause themselves. But anyway, enough about what other people are doing. What can we as individuals do if we want to contribute ourselves?
There's all the obvious ones, like Save the Children has a Save Syria's Children campaign and appeal you can donate to if children are, and Syria is specifically what you want to do. But alternatively, CalAid have a Just Giving page that you can use, and Tim, if you wouldn't mind putting a link in the show notes, and that goes towards any causes that CalAid are supporting, such as the 1,000 unaccompanied children, which they were helping. Alternatively, they also help things like the Women's Centre in the Calais camp, and I mean, they also have a presence in the Greek camps. Obviously, Calais is being demolished at some point, so they support all similar types of causes in Greece, but I've spent most of the time today talking about Calais. They also funded things like they sent across 8 British teachers this summer to teach in the Greek camps. We've got some interviews with some of those teachers coming out in the next few weeks, and they helped fund that as well with this money. So really worthwhile causes, most of which are to do with young people, but there is a wide variety. And then obviously you can also follow us, the bloggers, and we will keep you informed. And if you're a blogger, join the Facebook group and you can stay up to date with what we're doing.
Brilliant. So thanks for the update, Amie, and hopefully people will continue to contribute to making a difference, however small that might seem on an individual basis.
My mum has a brilliant phrase, just to finish. She says, it could have been by the roll of the dice. This could have been us. And there's absolutely no reason why it couldn't have been. And I think that's what keeps me kind of wanting to help, because although that's not a very altruistic reason, it's not these people's fault, and they've just been thrown into this horrendous life, and it's not really fair, but it could have been us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wise words indeed. And that's it for another episode of the Meet the Parents podcast. We'll be back next week, but in the meantime, here's where you can find the 3 of us online. I'm findingourfeet.co.uk, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram at findingourfeet.
I'm at buddingsmiles.co.uk, and I'm on all social media as at buddingsmiles.
And you can find me on my blog at slouchingtowardsThatcham.com and across social media at ThatchamDad. So you can download this podcast on iTunes and on Android devices, on our website at meettheparentspodcast.com, and via a variety of podcasting apps. Do please give us a follow on Twitter at ParentsPodcast and Facebook at facebook.com/meettheparentspodcast. So thanks for listening, and do please join us again next week. Good night.